Barbara, welcome to Peking.
Thank you. It's
Great
great
to
to be
have
here.
you. For the guest, Barbara is the co-founder, and CEO of AtSign, among other companies. She's also co-founded and been a part of, which I am very much looking forward to getting into your background and how you got here. I first want to appreciate AtSign's logo. I think the name and the logo just mesh really well together, and whoever designed that needs an extra pat on the back.
That would be my co-founder's daughter.
Amazing. I was hoping it was someone in the family or someone at the company, not some agency that
No,
didn't want to give any extra credit to.
she's actually, well, she's an amazing artist, but she does profile, people is really her thing. And so this was a perfect logo for her.
That's amazing. Awesome. So, giving the audience a little bit of context, when did you start AtSign and what is your kind of mission with it?
Yeah, so we started AtSign in June of 2019. And there were three co-founders originally. And Kevin and Colin were the technologists. I have a technology background, but I pale in comparison to Kevin and Colin. They are the real deal. And they had been arguing about the internet for years and how to make the internet more secure and more privacy focused. People are just treated horribly on the internet right now. And that's a real problem. And they wanted to fix it. And so they came up with this idea probably 10 years ago and worked on it. They tried it with DNS and blockchain, threw some tech together, and it just wasn't going to scale. So they put it aside and worked on other things. And then they came back to it at a time when the technology actually could work. And once they did that, they started talking to people about it and they talked to me about it. And I said, oh, sign me up. And so the three of us started a company together.
That's amazing. That seems to be the story of a lot of startups right now. It's ideas that people probably had for a while. The technology just wasn't there. Perhaps that's always been the story of new startups, but oftentimes, some success stories can come from just new ideas, but sometimes the ideas are there, the technology is just not.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that, I guess, in certain science fiction novels, and then certain parts of those science fiction novels are now true. What we can achieve. Before we get too much more into building AtSign and the disruptive quality of what you're trying to achieve, how about just a little bit more about your background, where you started?
Where I started was a long time ago. I started in the computer industry working on a assembly line as a taineger.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, back when we actually assembled stuff here in the
Yeah.
US.
So
Just
you
that
worked
long
in
ago.
Taiwan?
I know. Yeah. So, yeah. So took this job. My brother got me this job. I was 17, and I loved it. I just found technology fascinating. I really didn't like the way the assembly line was working, so I went in and adjusted things, changed things around, and they came out. This is so long ago. This was hardwired, and they finally came out with software-based products. And so the software products came down the assembly line and just plain didn't work. And so they had lots and lots of bugs. And so I said, look, I was a tester on the hardware before. And so I said, look, you need a whole software test department to make sure this stuff works before it gets to the line. So I started a software test group, and I've been in the industry ever since.
What was your, so you just went from high school to assembly line,
I did.
and then have you stayed in industry, or I guess I should know your educational background.
Yeah, no, I stayed in the industry. I ended up, after a while, at the same company, I ended up doing support because I knew so much about the hardware and the software. And then after that, left the company, became a systems engineer at one of the first Unix microcomputer companies called Fortune Systems here in Silicon Valley. And yeah, worked my way up to product manager, VP of marketing, and then CEO. Ran a division of a company, sold that division, then went to work at another startup as VP of marketing. The CEO was canned by the board, and I ended up taking over that company, sold it to Siebel Systems, and then after that, I really needed a break. Did an educational startup with a co-founder. It was a lot of fun. I was doing the majority of the programming, which I just found to be a blast because customers would call me with a problem and I'd go, "Oh, I can fix that immediately." So that was really fun. And but I was doing that, and it was more of a lifestyle company than a real a company that was going to really go places. So that's when I ran into Kevin and Colin, and they said, "Hey, we're working on something really big." And I said, "Oh, I want to join you."
How fun. You don't hear too many stories about a VP of marketing who ends up developing.
Well, so my roots really were in the tech support. I did write some code back then for database systems, actually, before they had report writers. It was all code based. And so I did have a technical background, but I'm actually not very good at coding. I
Same.
can, I can hack something together, but man, you do not want to use my code long term.
I can relate. You probably have much more than me. I did a little bit of vibe coding, as they call it now, of
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to build something with GPT, and I actually made a working product, a prototype that would
Nice.
review a resume against a job description, and I tied it to GPT 3.5, I think, as far as it was at that point in time. And it worked. And I sent it to our
Yay.
CEO, and I was like, "Let's get this going." And that was the end of that.
Actually, that type of coding skills that I'm the same way is really good because what you can do is create prototypes that real engineers can then turn into something that's great and working.
Yeah, it's definitely a feature of quite a few different recruiting tech companies' products. So that's it wasn't like just this brand new idea. It was just something I wanted to create quickly because I was reviewing like 100 resumes in maybe a few hours, and so anyone that had too long of a resume, I just plug it in. I wanted to do this drag and drop thing where I could have a full PDF, but I only got to text analysis.
Oh, that's pretty good.
You've been in Silicon Valley for quite a bit of time. First, do you think your career would have been the way it has been, would have turned out the same way in any other area, or do you think you are absolutely a product of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I'm absolutely a product of Silicon Valley. I moved here. I started in the industry in LA and then moved here because it's the place to be. And you meet so many people, and you know, after a while, you don't send around resumes. You just call somebody and say, "I'm looking for a position," and they say, "Oh, great, I know a couple people." And so, very rarely do people like me actually send around resumes.
Yep, yep. I have had a similar experience. I am also a product of Silicon Valley, although I live in Colorado now. I just randomly applied to a recruiting role in 2015, and now I've been in tech for 10 years, and it
Wow.
worked. I almost was a wine salesman.
That might have been more fun.
I don't know. Those are hard jobs. You go into
Yeah.
the supermarkets early in the morning and you got to set up the displays and they do a lot of bribing of the store owners, store managers. I would not have
Oh,
worked well in that.
you're right. That sounds painful.
But, who knows where it could have gone after that first role. Back to Silicon Valley as a whole, how have you seen Silicon Valley develop since the time you've been there?
Oh my gosh. It was big when I moved here. And it's so funny because I remember just driving around San Jose with all the names on the buildings that you recognize and thinking, wow, there are so many jobs here. There's so much you could do here. And and now it's even bigger. And it's actually hilarious because you drive down 101 and you see these billboards and they're all in tech speak. And people must just, people who are visiting must think, what are these guys talking about?
Very targeted advertising.
It's very targeted. And what's so fun about it is, your Uber driver has an idea for a startup. It's everybody has an idea for a startup. So it's just kind of in the air.
My brother is a very good salesman. He's never actually put it to work in a corporate environment. He's decided he doesn't want to work. And so he is a caddy at Pebble Beach and he loves the job. He gets to walk around basically a national park every day and talk to people having the best day of their life. So I don't blame him. It sounds like a really fun job. My wife will not let me do it, but
It really does sound like a fun job.
he's a tremendous salesman. If you ever go to Pebble, let me know. He definitely will
Yeah.
give you a wonderful service as a caddy. But he uh, convinced me early on because he was an Uber driver, and then he realized, or he was driving Uber. Then he realized he could make more money by referring drivers because Uber needed more drivers at the time, and so they would give $1,000 reward. And so I can make way more money just doing referrals than I can driving. And so we started posting Craigslist for drivers needed. Drivers just use my referral code basically because Uber wasn't as big yet. And he got me on one of them too. And I would have got a $700 reward once I got my 100 rides done. And so as I started my recruiting career, I also Ubered after work from time to time. And I would practice my recruiting pitch on all the just unfortunate passengers I picked up from PayPal and Cisco.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Your
I
brother
was
sounds
also a tech.
brilliant.
I was a tech guy driving Uber for a little bit, but I did 100 rides, and I think I did like three or four more. This is ridiculous. I can't do both. And everyone in my office like focus on recruiting. You're gonna make a lot more money. You do not need to, do not need to be driving.
Oh, it's got to be great experience though.
It
Just
was fun. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. It was fun. I think a lot of people that I did my little recruiting pitch to were not interested. I was like, you have to practice an elevator pitch because in staffing they teach you the cold call. Like, you got to call people cold,
yeah.
and even if they don't expect your call, and you have about 10, 20 seconds to get someone to either hang up or stay on. So I practiced on my poor drivers. Most of them were just, just graduated students from PayPal. Didn't have a car yet. They just Uber from work.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Yeah, I don't know how you do that actually. The whole cold calling thing is just so hard. I think
it
that's what.
never really gets much easier. It's always hard. Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks it's easy. You get a little more refined. The current strategy is to, crack a real small joke in the beginning. Or did I catch you at the really just the worst time? Yeah, can I just 20 seconds tell you whether or not the call's worth it? Just trying to keep it light, but there's so much sales content. Let's jump to AdSign. So the security world is definitely in a tumultuous time right now. Cybersecurity is one of the thing leaders I think are probably most worried about when it comes to advancements in AI and how it affects their
Yeah.
company. I don't think too many leaders are worried about their companies becoming obsolete, but the potential for attacks is definitely going to be higher with the capabilities of AI advancements. So help the listeners understand the current world of security before we get to the next generation.
Yeah. So the current world of security comes from the early days of the internet when we started putting servers on the internet and people started putting servers in their buildings. Back then, it was in their buildings, and so you didn't want bad people to come from the internet into your servers. So you built this moat around your servers, and you did it with firewalls. And as the technology grew, as people from the outside, some people from the outside actually needed to get in. If people were working off site, banks had branch offices. So they added VPNs, and VPNs means you had to punch a hole in the firewall, and it got a little messy, and it became a pretty pretty hard job to manage for a lot of people. And then so they kept adding more and more layers. So like Bastion hosts, so that you don't log directly in. You go in through this one door, and so you try to catch the bad guys in this one door. And so you keep layering these things on, and it becomes very, very difficult for somebody managing a large organization, even a small organization. Even people out in their homes have a hard time managing, just all their devices and making sure no bad guys get in. So we've reached a point where this is just not scalable. And as people move to the cloud, they didn't want to be completely on the cloud. They want some internal resources. So you have to have this bridge to the cloud, and then you get locked into that particular cloud, and then you want to move clouds, and that's like a 3-year plan that you've got to go through if you. So it's not scalable, and AI just really adds a lot to that because suddenly people want access to GPUs. Well, you don't really want to bring all those GPUs in house, so it's much better to use those on, like Oracle. But you've got to be super careful about how you access Oracle, and you don't want Oracle getting all your information as well. So you want to make sure you're completely protected. So the complexity has just got more and more. And as you said, the criminals are now using AI, and so they can easily find any open port on the internet and then just start mounting attacks. And this is particularly a problem for critical infrastructure, where an attack it can be very, very severe to people living in that area. And we're just not doing enough to protect critical infrastructure right now because I think people just don't know how.
Yeah, I think the most often use case of bad acting, security crime, hacking that the average person thinks about is probably for ransomware. Maybe
Yes.
lock up a company's data and say you can't have it until you pay me $10,000.
Yep.
And average person, they're like, okay, what do I need my company's data for? But then you realize that everything runs on the systems, and if the systems are locked, you can't do business. So you typically pay it out. And a lot of times they get access to that just by employee negligence and not being able to write a password long enough. There's
Passwords are the worst.
Yeah, there's a ton of different tools for that now, password managers and different tools that hopefully help you have a complex password. But these bad actors can potentially be part of a larger organized crime organization where if they get one of your passwords, they're going to try your accounts with other accounts. And if they know more about you as a person, they know what accounts you might have. And so they're getting into other, and that would probably be the most common case of cybersecurity crime. But you're talking about critical infrastructure, that would, I guess it could still be a ransomware type attack from a smaller actor, but also opens up the door for like state warfare
State,
and
yeah.
people, maybe North Korea or some other anti-American Iran or whatever it may be at the time. We seem to make quite a few enemies
Yeah.
whenever.
More and more each day.
Yeah, they would shut down our power. And if you shut
Yeah.
down power, you have about 3 to 4 days to figure it out before absolute mayhem. Like we do not want to see what that looks like.
We do not want that.
So I think the threat that you're trying to assist or mitigate is it couldn't be more clear that people have been talking about this for the last 10 years. Our grid is so vulnerable. Our grid is so vulnerable. What are you doing about it? And I think AtSign might be the first solution I've heard, and all the times I've heard the question, what are we doing about our grid vulnerability? So, what does this second generation of security look like? What are you building?
Yeah, so the difference is instead of trying to build moats around products with firewalls and then poking holes in the firewalls, and some of these firewalls and large corporations have hundreds of thousands of firewall rules that have to be managed and maintained, and it's they're just basically holes for somebody to find. So that's not going to scale. It's already broken, and bad actors have already figured that out. So what we do is very different. So first of all, no passwords. We use cryptographic keys. So much like blockchain does. This is not blockchain, but we do use cryptographic keys, and our cryptology module is something that you can plug in. So if our cryptology isn't strong enough for you, you plug in your own, like the government might want to do that. So every single thing, whether it's a router on the internet, whether it's a server, whether it's a IoT device, has its own @sign, hence the name of the company. And it can communicate peer to peer. It doesn't. So today's model of security says connect and then authenticate. Our model says authenticate, then connect. And so what this does is first of all, it makes everything invisible. You can't actually see anything open on the internet, which is a whole level of safety right there. If you do authenticate, and you have to authenticate with cryptographic keys, then everything between you and what you're talking to is completely end-to-end encrypted and can remain encrypted at rest as well. It's not like you decrypt it right away. You can send it on encrypted to somebody else. So it is everything is encrypted and everything is safe. There's no ports open on the internet for bad actors to find. Everything uses keys, which are much, much, much more safe than passwords. And it is actually more lightweight because you don't have to put layers on. Everything is protected itself on the internet. So it's surprisingly inexpensive to implement.
What does a key look like here? Are we saying like your touchpad, fingerprint, Face ID, or are you what?
Yeah, so that would be, yeah, that's a way to get to your keys. So, like on your Mac or your PC, you've got this fingerprint, but behind that on your Mac is a key. These are generally 256 characters or 256K characters. So they're really, you can't spoof them. So your keys are generally hidden behind that. And something like a Mac is super safe that way to hide your keys behind that fingerprint facial ID, unless somebody manages to get all of your Apple devices at once, and then that's a problem.
So you kind of talked about it earlier, technology not quite being there, but why hasn't this been done before or yet, or why is there not a larger race to get this to make this happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. And all of our customers ask this because it's kind of obvious once you think about it. But in order for us to build this, we had to build a ID server and an underlying protocol and SDKs. And this was not trivial to build. I mean, it sounds trivial, but it's not at all trivial to build. And in fact, that's why developers want to use our software because it's all open source, so they can easily
Yeah,
implement it
that's that.
because it saves them all that time. They suddenly get privacy and security by building on top of this without any effort at all. The last guy who did it, it took him 2 weeks to implement our software into his product.
And then what does that look like in use?
Yeah,
The
so for example, this particular product is Zeta Health. They have built this amazing system for radiology, exchanging radiology information. So they've got a bunch of hospitals in an area, and normally, if you wanted hospitals to exchange radiology information, IT would go, Yeah, right. Okay, we'll get a dedicated line that takes 6 months, and then so it's just doesn't. It's not easy to do, and that's why a lot of people are walking around with their radiology information from doctor to doctor, which is
Yep.
crazy.
CDs.
CDs.
It's scary. My wife has had to do that, and they literally give you a CD-ROM, and you bring it to the next doctor and give them a CD. It could only be more in the past with like a floppy disk.
Oh, except the floppy disk wouldn't have the capacity.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
crazy.
that's crazy. So he has built this beautiful UI where they just pick, I'm going to share this information with this hospital. That hospital has already been vetted to be on the system. So they do know that they're sharing with the right hospital. No involvement with IT. They can decide I'm only sharing this once. Only going to share this for an hour, and then I can take the data back if I want to, or retain ownership of that information. So it gives them vastly more control over the data, and and it's so easy. It's just his interface is just beautiful.
And in terms of scalability, is that an issue? The internet is enormous. Certain companies have a billion customers. What does that look like?
Yeah, so when Colin and Kevin did the first prototypes, I think they scaled it up to 5 billion with the computer in Colin's garage. And so the way it's architected is peer to peer. So there's only one little centralization, that's the name service. Much like DNS, even that can be distributed. So so it's because of its distributed nature, it's very, very scalable.
It sounds like the product on the show Silicon Valley. Have you seen that show?
I have not.
Oh my goodness, you would probably really enjoy it because when you live in Silicon Valley and then watch the show Silicon Valley, it's you feel like you're in on the joke.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it, but I've been kind of afraid to watch it.
Oh, it's so funny. There's this middle out compression algorithm where he's developing this crazy new technology, and one of the things that he's developing is it works peer to peer, where they are able to accomplish something that no computer could before because they're using these millions of cell phones all at once to do something like that. So
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to watch it.
it's worth it. It's worth watching. It's on Max, I guess it's called now, HBO. Jump into so you talked about hospitals, and then you talked about critical infrastructure. Where are you seeing the most, interest for the product currently?
Yeah, definitely in critical infrastructure. Salt Typhoon, I don't know if you heard about that. That was a nation state actor that was invading critical infrastructure. That's been a huge problem. We can absolutely solve that problem. So yeah, we've got a bunch of pilots in critical infrastructure right now.
And then what does it take? So it's just a plug-in device that you're saying for the servers.
Yeah, so we actually created this platform, and it was great, and it's great for software developers. But in order to show people how it worked, we decided to create a product, and my co-founder Colin did this as a demo. He created a product called No Ports, and No Ports does remote access like a VPN, although it's much safer, of course, because it's using cryptographic keys and you don't have to open any ports on either side to begin with. So it's just a much safer way to uh, connect and communicate. And it was so good that people wanted it as a product. And so we decided to start selling it. So No Ports is a product that we sell, and this is the one that's starting to go into a bunch of critical infrastructure. And what it also does is allows you to get into your cloud instances as well without any ports open. And it was funny because we started working with Oracle. We're an Oracle partner, and they are wonderful. And we were using our software to get into their cloud instances. And Colin got stuck one day and called support, and the guy said, "I can't get into this cloud instance because there was no way without AtSign that he could get in there. So it's very, very secure, even if you're running in the cloud.
And if you have access to the entire network or product, that's such a beautiful story of entrepreneurship or company building where you build something not as an afterthought, but you build something that is not the intention to make it a main product line. And then you just get customer feedback and you're like, oh, this actually has quite a bit of promise. We're going to look into this a little more. I think that's the whole story of Slack. Slack
Yes.
is just a video game company, I believe. And it ends up being a, what, $10 billion messaging
Yep.
company sale to Salesforce. Just crazy. But that is just another double down on the lesson of customer feedback needs to be driving business.
Yeah.
There's so many cases just the opposite of where it's like, I have this amazing product, but the customers don't feel that way, or the people don't feel that way.
Yeah,
So
and in our case, we really had to translate it for them. And
yeah,
I remember I had a discussion with Judy Estrin, she's a fabulous entrepreneur. And I said, how do you get new technology adopted? And she said, you've you've gotta dumb it down into something that exists today to make people understand what it can do. And so that when I saw Colin's no ports demo, I just went, "Oh, that's exactly what Judy was talking about. That's perfect. It's a VPN, clear VPN replacement, checks all the boxes, much, much safer." So it's been a great product.
if there is a vulnerability in terms of like the end user, or is there? Maybe you don't want to give this away. Is
Yes, I
what
understand.
are the like? There has to be something that's
Yeah,
can get you in trouble at some point.
yeah. People are always the weak link.
Yeah.
And so social engineering is still out there and can always be done. And we're using keys instead of passwords, but that's not to say that some social engineer couldn't figure out how to get the keys off of a person. So that would definitely be the weak link.
And social engineering, if you're not, I imagine
Yeah,
most
that's
technical listeners are very familiar. It's like coaching someone through to make a mistake, posing as someone else perhaps. And I used to get messages from my CEO all the time from
yeah.
Indian area codes.
Yeah.
Please send me a gift card. I'm at the store. I need it now.
Yeah, you would not believe how many of those messages I send to people.
Yeah. There are, I think, security consulting companies that run those experiments, and
Yes.
they get people that they consult. So my buddy works at Silicon Valley tech giant, and he got by one of their consulting security firms phishing. It's like, hey, I need this thing, and it's at company name and then like one missing character.com, and you really have to be on top of it.
You really do. It's
And then Outlook almost oversteps, or Gmail oversteps. I'll get emails from people with completely validated emails, and it'll have a big orange warning on it, like out of organization. We don't know if this email is validated. There's all this technicality to email verification as well, and so I think they are fighting hard against that, and you're seeing it impact non-phishing emails as well.
Oh, email is it is my pet peeve. Because one of the companies that I ran, or one of the divisions that I ran, and we sold it off, was one of the very first early email clients. So it had all sorts of capability before Microsoft decided to give it away as part of their operating system. But and then I did an email marketing software company after that, which I just hate that I did that because it has turned into a nightmare. And I get hundreds of emails a day unsolicited.
I was one of them.
Yeah, you were. And I actually responded for some reason, which is so unusual for me. They normally go into the trash can.
I think the difference in this cold email outreach is it's hopefully a win-win.
Yeah.
I get an interesting guest to talk to, and you hopefully get to put your message out there. There are other campaigns that I'm running that get maybe 2% of what I get with this podcast outreach because it's asking for something,
Yep.
and it's way different. And I hired a email marketing guy, and it's so complicated now. He probably uses one of the tools that you used to develop. Email deliverability is a whole nother world in and of itself. There's billion-dollar products that are focused on just making sure the email gets through,
Yeah.
and companies are happy, or marketing teams are happy with a 1% or 0.5%
Yeah.
positive response rate, or even just a response rate at all, which means that,
It's going down, down, down.
yeah, 995 people out of 1,000 are not interested in, in the
Yeah.
five. So
There's
it's
got to be a better way.
there has to be a better way. Yeah. It's
Because, I mean, if you think about it, in your case, people are hiring. So there's got to be a way to find those people that want to talk to you rather than bombarding everybody who doesn't.
there's just so many, it's so competitive, and
Yeah.
people want to work with people they know. And so that's a big challenge in staffing is cold business development, and a lot of business is driven by cold calling, and it's trying to develop a connection real quick and then finding time to meet, and then once you meet someone, they're a little more interested in talking to you. There's that barrier broken down. Back to you. So you've had an incredible career, launched, led quite a few companies, now driving AtSign's mission. What's been a defining moment, or maybe the toughest lesson that's shaped you as a founder and CEO?
Toughest lesson. I'll give you the toughest thing I ever went through as a founder and CEO. I don't know what lessons are in there. There's probably some. One of our co-founders, Kevin, passed away 2 years ago, and it was very sudden, totally unexpected. We were talking, the night before, and he just didn't show up for meetings the next day. So it was brutal. And Kevin and I have been friends for years. So we went way back, as had and Colin and Kevin were so close. So going through that of the shock and just sadness, and then having to share that with the employees, the investors, the customers, having to go through that over and over again was just something I was not prepared for. And I don't know that you can ever be prepared for that.
Yeah, I don't think so. That loss is a tough thing to deal with, and then having to tell everybody about it is just a whole different challenge in and of itself.
As far as the company goes or what I'm doing, I love what I'm doing, and I love the people. I work with the best people in the world, and so I would not trade it for anything. There's just not anything that would make me change that.
You found it. That's the I call it the cheat code, when you certain individuals find their zone of genius and are able to operate in it. And I think there's so many. I think the majority, especially in my generation, and maybe we just think about it too much, but is just feel like we're wandering in the dark. Like, how do we find that? This is what we're looking for.
Well, it took me a long time to find it.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
So wandering around is great.
Yeah, you gotta discover things. You gotta put yourself out there, take risks, and you discover much more about yourself and
Yeah,
where you want
and
to be, what you want to do.
you got to know what you don't like to know what you do like.
Yep, absolutely. Are you a globally distributed team?
Yes, we are. We started before COVID as a distributed team, and the reason why we did that is we wanted to pick the best people that we'd ever worked with and bring them together, and they were all over the globe. So we started that way. when we did our first intern program, we had 3 employees and 17 interns, and the interns were from all over the world.
That is just incredible. I've never heard anything like that before. How do you first just foster a culture where everyone from interns to co-founders is empowered to innovate? And what challenges have you faced in scaling that culture, especially with onboarding 17 people at once?
Yeah. So we decided, Colin, Kevin, and I decided very early on that we didn't decide this very early on. We realized very early on that we wanted to make this a flat organization and not have a hierarchy because we'd all worked in hierarchies and it didn't work for us, and we wanted to hire people who were self-starters and really didn't need managers to tell them what to do. So we took that and then translated into our intern program. So our interns would come in and we'd have a list of things that they could possibly do, but they didn't have to. They could do whatever they wanted. So pick a project. Here, we would tell them what the values of the company and the goals of the company were. Pick a project that you think can support the company and that you really are interested in doing. So they would fumble around for a little while until they found what they really wanted to work on. And we'd have a demo day every Friday where they would demo whatever it is that they're working on. So the first demo day is their pitches. Okay, here's what I want to work on. Here's what I'm thinking. And people would give feedback. And then the next demo day would be, okay, here's what I've completed. Here's what else I'm working on. And then we'd have a final demo day, which was just so much fun. And in the early days, people were building applications on top of our platform. So we saw some really amazing demos. Just people were just brilliant, and we ended up recruiting some of those interns, to stay with the company.
And how did you find these interns in the beginning?
In the beginning, I think we put it up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But so the very first year was when COVID had started. And so many interns had their intern program canceled because there's no on-site. And we were an off-site internship. So we had a ton of interest, and we just tried to accommodate as many as we could.
Smart. And how long did it take to set up the infrastructure to be prepared for that many people at once?
Yeah, so basically, it was it was kind of flying by the seat of our pants, really. We started off with a presentation on, here's the values of the company, here's everything that we hope you will accomplish, and guess what? We are building this as we go. So if you notice something, if you feel like something's not getting done that you would like more instruction, you would like more insight. We ended up having, I think it was once every other week, we would have one of our board members, do a talk with the interns about what it's like to be a board member or what it's like to be an entrepreneur, because we have some very successful entrepreneurs on our board. And different people in the company would give different talks, and so they got exposure to things that they just wouldn't normally get exposure to, and that made it a lot of fun.
Who was communicating with them throughout the week, or was it just kind of self-starters that picked their project and worked on it until demo day?
Yeah, so at first it was self-starters and whoever managed to make a connection with somebody else. One of our interns actually formalized that program because he didn't like the way it worked. And so he created a buddy program where each intern got assigned a buddy. And that I think they would actually change buddies occasionally during the program, and so that they would get a lot of exposure and support and help from their buddy.
And are you still running that intern program yearly?
We are. This year is a little, we're running a little thin on funds. So this year's, it's more about project-based intern program.
Makes sense. Yeah. So let's talk about that. You are building a company without VC so far, is my understanding. You have angel funding. Uh, Talk through that decision, starting with angel investors, maybe not quite interested in VC or just not needing them yet. How do you go about funding your startup?
Yeah, so my background is I had raised money from venture capitalists before, so we did start talking to venture capitalists immediately. But this is kind of it's a very different vision from what most people are used to in the VC community. And I don't think we were just hitting the right VCs that could really see the vision. So we ended up recruiting our chairman of the board, who Colin had known. They both worked at Juniper together. Her name is Kim Perticue. And she is brilliant and brilliant at helping us raise funds. And she had contacts with a bunch of angels. And so between the two of us, we were able to raise the initial round of funding. And then since then, and Colin's contacts as well. Since then, we've just kept on with our angels. We probably will raise a Series A from VCs, but we haven't had to. And it's very interesting because angels are very mission driven more than VCs. So they really want to see a change in the world and better security and privacy for people. And that's what we're all about. And so this is funding, this is important to them as a legacy, I think.
Awesome. Do you have any lessons or pieces of advice you'd give to a first-time founder pitching to investors in today's market?
Yeah. Oh my God. Pitching to investors is a whole thing. I I did some work, volunteer work with Astia, who helped women entrepreneurs, pitch their companies. And so I've helped a lot of people refine their pitches over time. And the specific advice, and I've had this happen with men too, but it's particularly true with women, is be sure to pitch yourself. Investors invest in people, and they want to know that you're the type of person who, I mean, your idea could change. You might find as we talked about earlier, you might find a market that's not at all what you're currently working on. And if you're a good enough team, then you could make that switch and just do something else. And you're going to go through some really hard times, and investors want to know you can tough it out. So be sure to talk about yourself first and your ideas second. And that's particularly hard for a lot of women culturally because they're taught not to talk a lot about themselves, and especially in some of the Asian cultures. And that's true even for some men in Asian cultures as well. So it's hard, but talk about yourself first.
Is real. There's people that I've met that I want some type of market where I can bet on them because you just know
Yeah.
they're going to be successful. Diving into that a little bit, obviously you've been a woman in Silicon Valley for quite a long time. What has your lived experience been in that sense? Have you encountered the like expected obstacles, or have you been pleasantly surprised ever? How has it been?
Yeah, I don't give it that much thought. I did when Colin and Kevin and I got together, I didn't actually expect to be the CEO. I had been CEO of other companies, but the last company Kevin and I did together, he was the CEO, so I just assumed he would do it. And when he said no, you're doing it. Because I mean, Colin and Kevin needed to do the heavy lifting of the tech, and so I needed to do the grunt work. But when he said that, I said, well, before you say that, know the statistics because women get 2% of the venture capital in the market at that time. And I think it's still pretty close to that today. So So you guys decide if you were willing to take that risk, because that is a definite risk. And so they came back and said, well, we don't want money from people who aren't going to invest in women CEOs. So that's what it is.
Is that stat like per capita basically as well, where it's adjusted for women seeking funding and men seeking funding?
So that's a really good question, because I think the reason why that is slightly skewed is that a lot of the companies that women start, they'll do bootstrap, and they won't actually seek the funding. And I think that goes both ways. It could be because they know the numbers and they just don't want to put themselves through that. It's no fun, believe me. It's no fun to pitch your company to you know people all the time and get rejected. It's just kind of soul crushing sometimes. But
It's a whole different skill set. You might be good at something, but sales is completely different.
totally.
I do the talk. I have the same conversation for candidates interviewing. It's like you might be an amazing engineer, but for this 30 minutes, you have to be in sales. you you have to sell your ability to do stuff. There is a little bit difference there where an engineer can talk technically deep about something, and you
Yeah,
can't really fake that.
yeah,
But there is also absolutely a piece of sales to interviewing too, and it's like, hey, this is a skill that you have to develop. We're gonna practice. They're like, I'll be fine. I'm good at interviewing. It's like, well, you can develop any skill whether you're good or not.
yeah, exactly. You can always get better.
Uh,
Yeah, and I just think so. Yeah, I think it's harder for women because they don't like to talk about themselves as well. So I think that's part of the problem. And VCs are pattern matchers, so the next you know founder of a small company is a young white male who's sleeping on somebody's sofa, typically.
there are some of those that I'm currently hiring for. It's really wild. Some of these at seed stage, I don't think any of them are Series A yet, but the ones that some of them I'm helping hire for, they're just like buddies from school, but they're just boy geniuses,
Yeah.
and they're just have almost no professional experience, but they built a company when they were 15 and sold it for $1 million. It's just like,
Yeah.
that's unfair.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for being that driven. That's awesome.
It's just driven and just genius. They're just so
Yeah.
it's just they got the cards somehow. Um, you've mentioned struggling to model taking time off as a founder, despite knowing its importance for your team. I think that has been a topic of conversation more recently, maybe more so the year before last than these last 2 years have kind of been grind mode. Everyone's like,
It's
oh,
true.
money is a real thing and we can't spend all of it immediately. But what strategies have you found effective preventing burnout for yourself and your team, especially in such a high stake company like a startup?
Yeah, so as I said, it's a flat organization. Our vacation policy is take vacation whenever you want, whenever you need. Trying to encourage people to do that is luckily some of the other people in the company are better at modeling that than I am. And we've got some really great senior people who do take time off, and that's wonderful. So I think some of the younger people follow that mold. Another thing that people can do, we have one of our employees who used to be an intern who she loves to travel. So she's like, oh yeah, I'll be somewhere else in the world next week, and I'll be doing my work, and I'll be a little late on calls because it's in that time zone. But so we support people to not only take vacation but work wherever you want. It's totally up to you. We had somebody who took maternity leave, and the maternity leave policy is take whatever time you need, come back when you're ready. And she's an amazing employee. I'm I'm so glad that I would bend over backwards to do anything to keep her. So
Do you think that model scales?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Does the flat organization scale? I don't know. I do know that some of these policies definitely scale. You know, we've seen them at companies even like Netscape, um, Netflix rather. That they have a vacation policy, take vacation whenever you want. And so I think some of these policies definitely scale. The flat organization, I don't know. I've been doing a lot of reading, trying to figure out how to make it scale. Some companies have done it well. There's a company or there's a organization called Holacracy, which they have a totally different model than we use, but it is a scalable way to do a flat organization. I don't think we're going to adopt their model, but they have some good materials that some of the policies that we can use. So it's still yet to be seen.
You talked a little bit more about the intern program. I was curious, you've kind of pivoted or you've built products from, you know, something that wasn't intended that way. Has there been a surprising contribution from an intern that changed how you think about your technology or mission?
Oh, there's been so many great contributions. I think one of the first ones, which was so much fun, was we had an intern in the very first intern program who said, you know, you want to, she got on the stand-up call. We have a stand-up almost every day. And she said, I have something at the end. And so she said, you want to make interacting with the company fun and let me go through your onboarding process and tell you why it's not fun. And so she had a whole presentation, page by page, of the onboarding process and just how painful it was. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just beautiful. And we cleaned up the onboarding process. But the guts of an intern to come in front of the whole company and say, you're doing this, you say you want to do it this way, you're doing it all wrong. I just loved that.
That takes some confidence. She actually had you on TikTok live waiting for someone to snap and she was going to go viral, but then nobody did. And she actually had to talk about her plan.
Yeah. All she got was applause.
Do you find the younger generation to be kind of more outspoken than previous, or you think it's just the outlier here or there?
Yeah, so I mean, so she was actually a writer, and we have interns who are engineers, and they tend not to be as outspoken, but they do tend to get their message across. Like I said, one of them created the buddy program because he didn't like the way the intern program, he didn't feel like the intern program was working, particularly for introverts. He said he wanted someone assigned to him that he could go to. And so that's just so cool. So even people in the company who are introverts figure out a way to make the company work for them.
Jump into back to the technology. So your app protocol eliminates the need for traditional security layers, perhaps firewalls, VPNs, while still prioritizing user-controlled data. Can you paint a picture of what the internet looks like in 5 to 10 years if the app protocol becomes widely adopted?
Yeah, well, everybody will have an at sign. Everything, every device, every will have an at sign, and that will be your protection against people getting your data, and you'll control your data. I mean, what when we originally started the company, we really wanted to go after the privacy space because we're all just privacy advocates at the end of the day. But people were not as concerned about privacy as they are about security. So that's why we've kind of pivoted and made the company more focused on security. But in the future, people will be creating apps on top of the app platform that are social apps, but you own your own data. And you decide who sees that data and for how long. So you can even assign people data for an hour. Let's say you're going to go get a mortgage. You can assign the mortgage company, bank data and a whole bunch of data that you don't normally want to share, and you can assign it for a month. and then say, okay, that's the end. I get all that data back and you don't get to keep it. So that is the future of privacy and security.
How do you convince skeptical IT leaders used to these legacy systems to adopt such a radical shift in network security?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because you do not want to walk in and say, okay, you got to change everything here. So No Ports is a great product. You can take it, and one of the very large pilots we're doing, they're just using it for their admin staff right now, because admin staff they have the keys to the kingdom. So you do not want them going in through a VPN. So they're just using it with the admin staff right now. So it'll work beautifully with admin staff. And then after a while, you go, oh, we're adding new devices to our network. Let's secure them with the app protocol. And then it just grows from there. So we don't say go in and rip out everything. We just say, first of all, start with something simple that you really want protected. And then as you grow, as you start adding things, make sure those new things are protected.
So companies have an opportunity to start in the most vulnerable areas or the most secure needed areas.
Yes.
Awesome. As someone, I mean, that makes complete sense where you start where it's necessary and then people kind of like it, they adopt it, and then it kind of spreads by itself.
Yeah.
And you're not needing to manage every account. People are kind of seeing the value as they use it.
Yeah. And they're calling us and saying, we want more.
As you, as someone who has seen the developer landscape evolve, what excites you most about how developers are using your tools today, and what untapped potential do you see? I guess you did kind of talk about apps being built on your platform. Anything else you would are excited about in terms of the future of people using your tools?
Every time we find somebody who's building an app on top of it, we just go, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that use. That's perfect. So, like the Zeta Health example, to see something like that is just, it's so much fun. It's so much fun to see what people are doing on top of it. We have somebody else who's built it's called @Crypto, and it is a blockchain. It's a private blockchain built on top of the app platform and app protocol. And what it does is allows, these guys came out of the pharmaceutical industry. So if you think about companies that really need blockchain, they really want to have a ledger that they can go back and see everything along the way of a drug approval process so that it can be audited. They don't really want that on the public blockchain. They really want that on a private blockchain. So they built a private blockchain, and it is so lightweight that it actually runs on a cell phone. So it's just super, super cool product. And it's not something we ever thought of.
Do you feel like the open source nature of the platform was something that was always your intention? Was that like a light bulb moment? Was that just a mandatory decision based on what you were trying to build? How did you decide to make the platform open source?
Yeah, that was Kevin and Colin had decided that long before I got into the picture. Kevin, I know, had very strong convictions about that. For me, it has made it so much easier to sell into larger organizations because it is open source. So they don't have to, if you don't do open source, then they're concerned about the code being supported long term, and they want your code in escrow. And it's a whole hoop that you have to jump through that we don't have to.
And what is your current strategy for client acquisition?
Yeah, so we've been doing word of mouth, which has worked really well. We know a lot of people in the industry, and so that has really helped us get some of these pilots going. Recently, we've been doing a big PR campaign on making things invisible. So every week we drop a new what we can make invisible press release. And so this week it was websites. So if you think about private websites, private websites are not private at all. Somebody can get to them if they have the URL, and then they can try to get through your password protection. We can make those private websites completely private so people can never see them. So that was a fun one. AI models, private AI models, and AI agents that can't be seen. So our invisibility campaign is working really well.
Very cool. I'll have to subscribe to your company updates
Yeah.
and see what comes next. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to talk about, discuss in terms of, I don't know, product development, ICP, customers, funders?
I think you were asking before about one of the what advice would I give to entrepreneurs pitching? The advice I would give to entrepreneurs building a company is people are the most important part of your company. It's the same thing as pitching, right? So people are what your company is made out of. And don't ever feel like you have to hire just to fill positions. And you probably know this very well, given your business.
That is my LinkedIn first line is people are the foundation of every company.
Yep. And a lot of times, I mean, I ran a company during the dot-com boom, and I had one of my investors on my board say, I have a company that's hiring 70 people a month. And there was so much pressure for hire, hire, hire. And that is so wrong because the wrong hires can just they just destroy morale, and it's just not, it's never worth it. You never have to hire that quickly. Hire right. And if it takes longer, it takes longer. It's worth it.
There's only a few companies that are I'm seeing I'm hiring for within the kind of VC or YC ecosystem that are looking to scale incredibly fast. But they still have a pretty high rejection rate. They're still rejecting a lot of people. But they are trying to hire, I think, 40 people. They're trying to double the size of the company in like 6 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
it's just hectic. I mean, you're interviewing a lot. That is one of Walter Isaacson's profile of Elon was in his early days. He was interviewing hours and hours every single day, and just incredibly focused on hiring the right people. But it's just an enormous investment of your time. And of course, there's new AI companies that are promising to take away the interview time and do the interviewing for you.
that's scary. I have a hard time even with the eliminating resumes through AI because I just think there's some gems in there that you'll just miss.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, resumes are so hard. If you don't recognize the company name, they could still be building something incredible, but if the company's name is not recognizable,
Yeah.
recruiters are like, nope, I want to hire from Ramp, Clay, and Brex, and all. It's just only YC scale startups. And I mean, it's a trusted brand. It makes some sense, but I wish there was some middle ground where they could take some sort of assessment and show promise outside of just having to have the exact company name on the resume that you're looking for.
I agree completely. We hired a self-taught programmer in Guyana who is a wonderful programmer. He was working in a warehouse at the time, and he said, "I'm going to be your best Flutter developer," and he has been fabulous. So I mean, you can't find gems like that with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the law of, I don't know if it's a law, but it feels like it should be of outliers. There's going to be outliers in
Yeah,
every situation, and
yeah.
you want those. You
You
want the
too.
outliers. You need to somehow allow yourself to find those. I think that's just hard to do if you're looking for top 20 school and top 30 startup, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
all I want to see. Well, I am super excited to see what AtSign accomplishes. Where can someone find more information about you and AtSign?
So atsign.com, noports.com for the noports product. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, although my LinkedIn account was hacked.
I
So
saw that.
none of my information, I had tons of blog posts. I had recommendations that I'd written for people. All of that was wiped out. So none of my background is up there. It's just, and I know I have to reassemble it, but man, I do not want to spend my weekend doing that.
Can you give your LinkedIn profile an @sign?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I want. Anybody out there listening, please create a LinkedIn competitor using @sign. I will be your first customer.
Oh, LinkedIn has such an advantage. It's crazy. I've ranted about this for the last 6 months. They just haven't changed their product at all. 10 years, they haven't changed their product. And they just,
I know. It's just so ripe for somebody to come along and create a better product.
yeah, companies come and go. Very few companies stand the test of time, so you never know. Hopefully we'll see some. There seem to be some talent startups that certain recruiters are excited about that I haven't heard of yet, and I've been looking into. So we'll see. Barbara, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I would love to have you on again in maybe a few months' time after you guys hit certain milestones, or if there's any other
Yeah.
occasion to come on. And I'm very excited to see the progress of AtSign and hopefully just protect our critical infrastructure. That would be a great
Right start,
accomplishment.
wouldn't it?
Even if the company doesn't become $100 billion company, if the critical infrastructure is protected, that is a win.
Yes. We definitely need that. This is
Awesome.
great
Thank you
talking
so
with
much.
you. Thank you.